Hi, everyone, and welcome. If you're just joining us, Catherine and Simon and Grace, thank you. We are seeing a trend of people logging on due time and not before, so we might just give it a minute or two and allow the rest of our attendees to hop on before we kick off.
Hey, Danny, I did just send a quick DM in the chat.
Oh, you did? Let's see.
Those while you're waiting, you should have a chat bar on the right-hand side of your screen. The platform is not altogether intuitive. It's not a HubSpot platform, but you could type messages as we go or questions you might have at the bottom of that chat pane. Just make sure you're sitting in the chat tab at the top.
Need some like elevator music or something, Glenn, for next time.
Absolutely, it's so difficult. We've had challenges with this tech, but I was just thinking some BT music and a better vibe certainly would have been better.
Definitely.
So apologies to all. We'll see if we can integrate that in next time. It's not so simple.
In a previous life, I was a wedding DJ, Glenn, so maybe I'll dust off the decks for next time.
That would
Well,
be
that
ideal.
phenomenal, Darcy. Thanks. Consider that locked in.
Done.
Yeah, so thank you all. Danny, I think we might kick off then.
Let's do it.
You can see the numbers stacking in now, so we've got this recording, but we will kick off. So welcome to our first ever sales and CRM ANZ HubSpot user group, everybody. And today's part one in a three-part series, developing your sales operating system. The motivation to every word coming out of my mouth today, hopefully, will answer this one question. What is 1 hour worth to you? And what are you going to leave the session with today? And my goal is to add value with every slide, as is Danny's, in consideration for your time. So I can't promise, but I do aim to do my best and to add value for you guys and your sales teams and your sales function. So we're ultimately looking at sales, CRM, sales systems, and how to use these sessions to help you return added value and as much value in terms of revenue that we can from each hug session. So we also need to ensure that we're building a world-class sales system together that's going to match, hopefully, your world-class marketing systems. Otherwise, all this hard work basically goes to nothing, which is not what we want. So from an agenda perspective, we're just going to do a very quick intro and welcome. From a session perspective, we're going to run through pipeline setup and gearing towards and probability to close. We're going to look at your numbers, knowing your numbers, and then just CRM setup, custom properties, and finally we'll wrap it up with the Q&A. And we're excited by the tech that you can actually engage, so we can make this a lot more interactive than we thought. And the goal is really to keep this quite tight, guys, within 30 to 60 minutes, obviously pending your participation and responses. So without further ado, I'd like to just quickly present myself. I may not be on your team and I may not know your business and how you run your business and how you do your job, but I know sales and I know HubSpot and CRM and the HubSpot sales platform together with my team. pretty much inside out, but ultimately we know how to grow businesses, and hand in hand, we do this with HubSpot, and we're here to help you. Ultimately, that's what this user group is all about. So for 5 years, I've been helping teams and businesses grow their revenue through advanced and sometimes AI-backed automated sales and marketing using HubSpot. And finally, this year we were awarded with this hug, which is awesome. And on that note, I'd like to introduce you on the HubSpot side to HubSpotter extraordinaire in everything HubSpot, Danielle or Danny.
HubSpot extraordinaire. I'll take that title. I'll change it. So I'm Danny. Everyone, nice to meet everyone. I'm a channel account manager at HubSpot, which means I'm essentially working with partners across our network in ANZ and to support when their customers are evaluating HubSpot as a CRM itself. So I really support in that kind of co-sales motion. I've been at HubSpot just over 2 years now, was in a direct selling role of the software, also in a partner acquisition role, and now account management with partners. And I really am truly passionate about HubSpot and what it can do to revolutionize your business. And having been in a hands-on sales role utilizing HubSpot, and also having had many conversations with various stakeholders over my years here about CRM, I'm really hoping to be able to pass on some of that knowledge and expertise and experience that I've had across utilizing the platform, and some of that kind of theoretical knowledge as well to you today. So I hope you can take something really insightful away from the session.
Thanks, Danny. So let's see if we can do that for them, Danny. And let's just jump right in, guys. So first cab off the rank, we're going to talk about pipelines and pipeline setup and probability to close. And through today's event, and actually throughout this 3-part series, we're going to just use an event scenario or demonstration based on these 2 hypothetical personas. So I will represent the sales manager or the sales manager role. And as we move through this, Danny will represent the sales team member or business development manager or rep through these hypotheticals. So when you see these logos, we'll point that out. So just by way of a quick poll, and I can see the numbers have grown a little bit, Danny, on the attendees today. So for those that may have joined us a little bit late, you've just missed an intro, but we're just trying to do a poll to better align how we pivot and turn today's session. If you could just type in the chat pane for us, either just the letters or the words, if you could type those out and just let us know, you, yourself, your business, do you have any of these? A CRM system? Do you not have a CRM system? You're using a database in marketing or sales, and you might just be Excel files, right, with contacts and customers and company details. Do you have a sales playbook? So that's option C, a formal playbook for how you run sales. Do you have a holistic operating system, a proper way that your whole sales efficiencies run? Or you might have none. In which case just pop an E in there. So please don't be shy. If you're on the call, please just respond in to give us a heads up. Thanks, Simon. Thanks, Sue. That's awesome. And we'll just give that a little bit longer. So this is great. So it seems like most of you have a CRM covered, which is fantastic. And just jumping into the second question, knowing that you have that or you don't, do you have a pipeline? So for example, the one that we've got on the screen in the background is a visual of a HubSpot pipeline, but do you actually have a pipeline? Have you set one up? Does it look like this? Do you not have a pipeline? Option B, or maybe you don't have a pipeline, but you can indicate for us if you have the intention to set one up. Awesome. Great. I see Andy's just joined us. Grace, thanks.
We have a real mixture there. We have lots of people with a CRM and some people with pipeline and some with plans to set one up. So we definitely had a lot of content for both groups, for sure.
Exactly. And I think that's the tough thing. Even those that have a pipeline set up, Danny and I are really hoping that we can give you enough depth and breadth today to maybe challenge your pipeline setup. And is it set up correctly, as robust as it could be, or is it not? So what we'd like to do is just spark some thought for you and make some stimulation around some just simple questions that we need to know, and what our sales process is that we actually need to plan for, plan around. So even though you may have a pipeline or some that indicated you don't, the things that we may want to think about are what are your key stages in your sales process, right? So although you have your pipeline stages set up, we oftentimes, Danny and I, see businesses that have set up too many stages or maybe too few. There's sometimes a confusion around, what is a task, and does it have to actually be a stage, a column, or I need to send an email or a brochure, and we've got certain businesses that are setting up an entire stage for that, where it could be handled through a task instead. So what we don't want, and we might have examples of sales processes that have, like 24 steps. The way to think about it is, if you go from a prospect who's made an inquiry all the way through to invoicing that prospect, making a sale, what are the steps in between your sales process look like? And ultimately what we want is about 4 to 6 stages in total remaining. And then based on your various scenario, like I said, you might take a blank canvas, plot out 24 steps that you think it takes, including sending brochures, adding certain details into the system, running tasks, following up clients, making calls. You might want to just map all of that down, write that all down, and making sure that within that plan, we can start to map out clear, distinct stages to actually move a sale from step to step to step. So there might be multiple actions in different departments. If you're in a industry like education, you might have an admissions team. So the sales team brings in a student or a lead, for example. But once they get them on board, there are things like campus tours or sending out information. Application forms, it's handled by a different set of hands, a different team. There might be legal requirements, timing issues, all different pieces outside of just one set of hands inside your pipeline, other users inside there. So the above all need to feed into your CRM and sales operating system, and they need to be customized and they need to be editable over the long term to suit your business use case and the whole need of your team, and all aligned. So how the above would then reflect into HubSpot might be a balance of connecting email tools and using meetings tools and snippets and sales template emails and even tasks tools. But those kind of actions may not necessarily require, as you're seeing on my screen, actual columns or pipeline tasks. And Danny, maybe you want to even talk about the pro users on the call, those that have their pipelines set up.
Yeah. I think I take this from a sales rep's perspective and the people who are actually on the front lines utilizing this. You want to make this as efficient and easy to use as possible. We all know, and something I'll probably refer to again, is like the path of least resistance from a sales rep perspective is very much a commonality across the salespeople, and we really want things to be simple, easy, and if they're not, there's a tendency that they can be moved away and not utilized. And a CRM that's not used is really a huge waste. And so we want to start making this very planned out, very methodical, and transparent with our reps. And there's certain things across this pipeline that are going to make things easier. They're going to mean that the path of least resistance is the one that you want them to take. And some of the pro features that can enable things like that are utilizing sequences. So there might be a certain step or a bunch of steps in a process that are all email based, and we might want to automate some of that. Or we might want to use deal automation. So if I move something from appointment schedule to qualified to buy, we actually might need to bring somebody else into the program and into the process itself. And having that task automatically assigned and bringing that person in so that I am whom the individual user, number one, I'm not prone to making errors or letting things slip through the cracks. But number two, I'm not actually having to do anything. A lot of that is automatically happening on my behalf. And so really helps you have that solidified sales process where things are documented and mapped and really simple into the CRM itself. So simplicity, I'd say, is ultimately key here.
Awesome. And so just dovetailing off that then, Danny, it's like these factors and the questions you're seeing on the screen and a lot of the bits and pieces Danny's mentioning, more maybe on a pro level, just in a basic sense, they all affect your pipeline, and they're factors we need to think about and consider and include. So it's little things like how are your stages planned out around your process. So if we're saying in real practical terms, take a blank page, write down the steps that you need your sales process to follow as a team, or if there's just one of you or there's 5 of you, who leverages what data at each stage, right? And so right at the start, a lead comes in. What does that look like? And really going granular, like internal. And that's something you might need to talk about with your team. If you're a sales manager, not just planning it for them, but getting everyone involved in the conversation and the practicalities of how they do things. Like what is that lead qualification process? So whether it's a form that's filled out on your website or it's an incoming phone call, how do you qualify leads? Like, can you improve that? What does a best fit lead look like? Have you actually thought about, if I put 5 bullet points on a page, is there a way, if I was staring at 1,000 people, how can I ask 5 questions that'll really ring fence the ones that matter to one side, and so I can start focusing on those? And your pipeline really needs to be geared with that simplicity in mind. there's this concept and term we call hand raisers. So someone who fills out a contact form on your website, they want someone to talk to them. Now, this could be a grumpy customer. This could be a prospect who's just frustrated with your user experience on your website. There are some definitions in HubSpot that if someone fills out a form, they might be a qualified lead because it's a contact. You've got phone numbers, email. So a lot of common mistakes we see just not even putting a qualifying question on your contact us form, like what's your inquiry about? And that might be, for those on the call, sound silly, but for some might think, wow, I actually don't have that on my form. There's a value add. Go away and add one. But it could be as simple as, is it a sales inquiry or other? And if it's a sales inquiry, have a second question. If you can, as a dependency, which you can with HubSpot forms, what is the inquiry about? And these are all ways of, first, you need to think about your best fit and then plug these questions in to qualify that best fit. And do you, in fact, know the answers to these questions yourselves, giving your clients or your prospects the right answers?
I think you want to also, just to add on to what you said there, Glenn, is enable the frontline sales to have those conversations and pick up the phone in a really timely manner. Time is of the essence if somebody is filling out a hand-raising form or something along those lines. And I think there was a study I read not that long ago that it's like diminishing returns even after the first minute to 5 minutes of them actually filling in that form. So if you can catch them right on that second, hopefully they don't go down this is a bit creepy route, but actually this is really helpful. And I filled in this form and someone's called me instantly like, wow, how buttoned up is your organization? And give them that awesome customer experience right from the very first time they engage with you as a business, I think is really critical.
And it's so tough, just even being able to sit down and just do that. We see so many times a chat bot or chat functionalities on a site and they just get it hopelessly wrong. So even these little questions might just help you realize just the simple things that can really make all the difference. So I think Danny and I struggled because there's so much we could talk about in such a short space of time. But I think to help you demonstrate, and you may not be intimate with HubSpot or just new to the platform, or you might be deep in the ecosystem. So to make sure everyone's comfortable, we wanted to just demonstrate by looking a little deeper at, what you're seeing in the background is a HubSpot pipeline, right? These columns, and on the right, we've just brought in the left-hand side of a deal with some fields in there, just so that as we present this, it makes sense for you. But ultimately, what we want to convey is kind of best practice at the two perspectives, that if you're a sales manager, the way you set this up, and you're a sales rep, the way it needs to be set up, we just want to make sure that we've got the basics covered. So from a pipeline setup point of view, and let's look at it from the sales manager side, coming back to our example before, you might have you think you've got 24 stages in your pipeline, right? But actually in there is weaved in things like sending an email or making a call. So what you want in kind of nutting out these stages is just very tight. You just want no extra columns than you need. And I think Danny and I were just discussing before we jumped on that, it's never set and forget. You're never going to set up your pipelines and think, okay, I'm done. My process is final. Because if you're doing the job well, you're going to scale and grow. And if you're scaling and growing, you need more hands in the pie. And so what you start off building today may not be what you have in 3 years' time when you've got a thriving team, hopefully, around you. So to start off with, if it is a bit longer and it's not precision perfect, done is better than perfect. And you just want to get this started. But again, just defining your process, building out these columns, and actually playing around with it, you'll find that in itself is a good process to cleanse it, clean it up, and get what you need there. And for some of you on other systems, maybe, or you've come from other systems, what HubSpot calls a deal, which you see in the background, is sometimes a difficult term to get your head around. So if you've come from Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics, I think they call it an opportunity, but really a deal is just a vehicle, right? It's a vehicle that I'm passing through these stages to get to the closed won state and actually make my sale. Right, so when we refer to a deal, just think of it as a vehicle to track each invoice or each sale through to a closed won state. Or if at some point you weren't a fit for your prospect and they said, listen, I'm not interested, you'd move to a closed lost state where this deal no longer has any life. So other things as a manager you may want to consider is just the basic deal properties, right? As we're seeing on the right, and I do apologize if this is a bit microscopic, but inside the information about a specific deal, so basics, which, Danny, I'll hand over to you in a sec to cover as you're seeing them on the screen. But you just want to think about, there's bare basics out of HubSpot. And if you've set up or looked at a HubSpot CRM, you'll see what they are. But you then want to enter into a stage where you customize your needs, which ties into that best fit and qualification that we mentioned. So I might hand over to you, Danny, from a rep side of, we've got our stages. How does that impact you?
As a rep, I think the first and foremost question I have is like, when should I even be opening or creating a deal in the first place? That I'd say is a fundamental first step that you need to clarify in your own process. So this one that you're seeing on screen here, appointment scheduled, is really clear, and it's very similar to the HubSpot methodology. So whenever we've booked in an exploratory or a discovery call is when we would open a deal. But for other businesses, it might be different. And just qualifying internally for yourselves as to when a deal is actually qualified to be physically created for CRM hygiene perspectives, and also for reporting and management of my own day-to-day as a rep, is really important first step. But then also, as you move through these stages, what is the information that I need at each and every stage, and ensure that you are requiring that key information. For example, we can't really send a quote without having a dollar attached. So make that a required field. So physically don't allow people who are using this pipeline to move a deal from one stage to the next if it's not got that critical information, because this will also help you qualify in and qualify out. And qualifying at every stage is actually probably really vital to running a really great sales process, especially early doors. And so things that would help me as a rep are, okay, what are the, and I'm not saying have a script, but a version of questions and information that you might need in order to ensure that this is a qualified opportunity or lead that we might be discussing or having a conversation about. And empowering the sales reps to qualify out as well. That is probably almost as important as qualifying in, because you don't want wasted effort here. You want, there might be specific things in your industry that are like specific to them being in or out. So let's say, I don't know, I went into a Maserati garage and somebody asked me what my budget was, and I said I had a $20,000 budget. Well, I'm probably pretty quickly qualified out from buying a Maserati. But that's a very easy and very basic way of thinking about this. But I'd challenge you guys to think about what those qualifying in or out things are for your business. It might be a timeline thing. It might be an industry or a segment, or really anything that's specific to your business that you can ensure you're gathering that information and empowering your reps or salespeople to ask the right questions in order to progress deals and opportunities on, and then layering that information into your CRM to make it really simple and easy for them to functionally manage and move things through. And also this helps when you're hiring new sales reps. So if you're thinking, a lot of you have CRM and have a really solid pipeline. So I'd question if you have that really solid process documented as well, because this is really helpful if you are scaling and hiring. It's going to be much easier for me as a brand new salesperson in a business to learn the process that you guys have implemented if it's written and documented and managed in a pipeline that's really simple to use. And it's going to mean that I can ramp in that role much quicker as well, rather than trying to feel my feet, understand what questions I need to ask whilst learning the product. There's a lot of things on new people as well. So I'd say it would really help in a scaling and growing business too. Glenn, you're muted.
Just to extend that as well, that some businesses often ask the question like, when would I have two pipelines? So depending again on your HubSpot licensing, you might have part of your business that handles B2B partnerships, right? And then you might have part of the business that's just B2C or multiple product. And so if you are one of those businesses, you might find how you approach industry partners is completely different to how you approach, just end users of your product. And therefore if the stages are clearly different or completely separate, that's a good indicator that I actually need a separate pipeline. And what you find is some of these custom properties on the screen on the right here might differ then. And you can even customize, the different needs that you have for partnerships versus generic customers into different sections. So don't be deterred that, I've got to squish this all into one pipeline, but just balance off, the custom needs with the pipeline needs. And I think, Danny, it's also worth mentioning maybe like just for advanced users that if you do have a pipeline and you may be challenged with other issues with your sales team, like too many deals, right? You may not know, but HubSpot's got like an active and an inactive deal, that if for 14 days a deal hasn't been touched, and you can set the 14 days, a color changes automatically when you're looking at these deal cards. Like you see, this one's white, it might go gray, but you can also have automations on your deal pipelines. Like if the close date is passed and the rep didn't know, they can get an auto email that says your close date's passed, come and give it attention. So I think, step one, obviously today we're a bit more basic and trying to be generalist, just nut out your pipelines, get more stealth, just get them working. But just to let you know, there is green pastures, that there's a lot more to it you could do with automation. So I think moving on to our next segment, guys, is with all of this in mind, and we'll just fast track and assume we've got a nice pipeline set up. We might be leveraging the tasks tools, the email template tools. Danny, I think before you said, you could script it, but for some of the business cases we see, they've actually set clear scripts of what every rep should say, and you can use HubSpot snippets to just draw those up quickly. But I think behind all those activities is really a huge chunk that could actually drive your pipeline now, and how we feed it and how we grow it and how we approach it, and even the custom properties we might need, is this concept of knowing your numbers. So again, as a quick poll, and I can see, we've had some join us late, which is fine. But if you could just help us in the chat pane by typing, we're going to walk through a process called reverse planning or reverse engineering, just to help you as a bit of a method for your numbers. And we'll just repeat again, we will be sharing these slides with you after the event. So if you want to draw on the notes and all the things we're referencing, you'll get those, don't worry. But if you could just type in the chat pane whether you've ever run through the methodology of reverse planning or reverse engineering. I'll just give you a sec or two to go through that for us. So ultimately, when you've got a goal ahead of you, let's climb Mount Kilimanjaro, it's often difficult to see yourself at the top. But if you kind of chunk it up into the 4 base camps and say, okay, my goal is to get from camp to camp to camp until I hit the top. Reverse engineering is a bit like standing on the peak of the mountain and looking down at each of those base camp levels and saying, okay, what are the steps we have to get to before we can reach the top where we're standing today? And it's quite a simple concept, but if we think of things like just setting clear goals, setting KPIs, your reps numbers, like what are the targets they have to achieve? Yes, it's revenue numbers, actual sales. So we need that as a number, but it's also the emails and the meetings booked and the calls we're logging, even reporting and the frequency and the amounts per sale, the number of calls we're making, the time a deal sits maybe in a pipeline stage, and even more important, the conversion rates. So each column, what do our conversion rates look like? And are your targets defined? So I know I'm throwing a lot of buzzwords out here, but what we want to do is look at these, these bottom end numbers and then reverse engineer our way backwards. So Danny, I might just hand over. I know you love doing this. I'll hand this over to you.
I'm definitely an analytical person. So like this reverse engineering and kind of number crunching is very much up my street. But I always think of this as a bit of and something my manager always says to me as well, is it's definitely a science and an art to forecasting and to working backwards and to figuring out what goes in the front end to spit out the other end in order to achieve targets and goals and numbers. And it really is a numbers game. Any sales role I would challenge is most definitely a numbers game. And the CRM itself can help you identify these types of metrics and really kind of map out and work backwards from your goals. So to walk you through what's on slide here, let's say for a nice round number, I have my target as $5,000. That is what I need to sell in any given month to be on track for my manager to give me a big pat on the back and say, well done, you're doing a great job. And if my average sales price, so my average deal size is approximately $1,000, and then I need ultimately 5 customers. I need to close 5 deals this month in order to hit my goal on average. So the CRM can help you identify these conversion rates, which are just along the bottom here. So if I'm working backwards, I'm getting 50% conversion from a contract sent to a closed won deal, then I need to send 10 contracts. I'm working again backwards from there, conversion 20%. I need to have 25 presentations and I need to move 125 people into a qualified to buy because my conversion there is only 20%. So I mean, what I'd say about looking at this is 625 appointments scheduled seems really scary, right? Like if I'm working backwards from these numbers and I'm having to have 625 conversations in any given month to close 5 customers, I'd be like, wow, it can really give you that moment of like clarity. And I think identifying areas that you can change or work on to actually make this more realistic. So one option here could be what is my average sale price? So it's $1,000. Are there other things that I could sell? Is there any way that I can move the needle on this average sales price? Is there add-ons? Is there new products, features, things like that that I can bundle in to increase my average sales price, so I don't need to sell 5 customers? I only need to maybe sell 3 or 4. Or ultimately, like the conversions as well. So 20% from that qualified to buy to presentation schedule, I'd say is an area in which you could really work on. And this is probably where you'd sit down with your manager and say, what are the things I'm doing that I could be doing better? You could be utilizing, if you're really advanced user, you have sales enterprise, for example, things like conversational intelligence, listening to other phone calls, if you have Gong or similar function, similar software like that, to really try to replicate what really high performing reps are doing, the questions they're asking or the strategies and techniques that they're using, and try them out yourselves and essentially improve these conversions rates over time. So it can really give you the clarity on potentially what you need to do internally yourself. And is this realistic? If not, then we've got to change something. Something's got to be moved internally.
Awesome, Danny. I think also reinforcing, like coming back to what we were saying at the beginning, in building out these pipelines and even considering your best fit, when you start to reverse engineer numbers, you start to say, okay, hang on, maybe our best fit is too finite. Maybe we need to open the floodgates a bit more to allow for these 625 opportunities. And again, this is very hypothetical, right? But I think therein lies the gold. Like, is our product right for the market? Like Danny said, is the pricing right? Do we need to increase our price by 30%? Because you might have the opposite issue as well. You might be having too few leads and you don't need many leads because you've got a high value item, but it's just cherry picking the ones that, okay, maybe your job is to speed up this pipeline. So obviously there's lots and lots of factors, most of which we spoke about before, but am I selling the right product to the right person as well? And is marketing doing its job? Like, you might work with a marketing team where you actually want them to deliver the 625 from inbound marketing or other marketing channels. Are they actually giving you 625 opportunities, or too many? Maybe too many, they're giving you rubbish leads because they don't know the best fit criteria. Maybe you've not done this whole process yet, and this whole process could help you feed that information back to marketing. Like, guys, can you ask this qualifying question on the marketing forms on the website to make sure that these numbers are actually met and hit and doing the right thing? Cool. So I think depending on your business and the product and the service, obviously, this is where you want to consider things like custom properties. So I know we're covering a lot, but things like sub-segments to your product. Maybe you have opened your net too wide. Maybe you've got a pipeline to sell all your products, but you actually want to know specifically, this deals for this product, that deals for a different product, and this deals for a different service. So we might want to have a placeholder of how do we actually tell HubSpot, tell the system, tell the user that we're working with a custom property. And so, for example, on the screen, you're seeing this might be a property to deeper forecast somebody, or this could be the lead status, right? So the status you'd allocate is, I've got a lead of one of the 625, but which phase is it in? It's almost likely to close, or it's a best case lead, or they're ready to commit. So it can give you a feeling of how close they are in your pipeline. So coming just back to your numbers, it's our recommendation, and we've got a homework slide, which we'll obviously share with you with the video as well, just certain numbers that matter to you. So we've just given some examples here on the screen: monthly recurring revenue, number of calls, number of meetings, number of tasks you have. And these also, if you've got a bigger team, these become competitive metrics just from a gamification point of view. You could have leaderboards, you can have some fun with it. So we've kind of covered a lot of these high level numbers, total revenue, and the process. And I think from a kind of manager and rep level, we're just covering on the screen just some of the tools in a bit more detail that lead to these numbers. We'll cover in the future sessions. But at the moment, you're looking just at basic examples of just little reports on a dashboard in HubSpot, but it just gives you an idea, because you may not be doing this at the moment, that the amount of sales that your reps are closing, in terms of site visits, each stage of your pipeline, the amount of currency. You can obviously report on a rep level how much each person's doing, and you can even do so effective to your marketing channels. even outcomes we spoke about, recording your calls, when people leave messages or connect, and indicating that. It's really powerful information. And if you've set up your deal pipelines and the properties properly, some of these are baked into HubSpot's DNA. So you don't really have to do much. You just have to put your customizations in, but even number of emails and meetings set. So it's kind of all about doing more with less and using productivity and efficiency tools to be able to do that. So the 625 shouldn't seem so overwhelming if the tools are helping you carve through those 625 quicker. So from a manager level, you just want to keep track of these, obviously, through reports. And is the team doing enough calling? Are they sending too many emails? And is that not relationship building? Because they should be on the phones a little bit more. Have we got the content that we need to help the sales team through those calls? And have we got enough meetings booked, etc.? So Danny, from your perspective on a rep side, how do these numbers sit with you?
Yeah, like for me, especially if you're in a competitive sales environment, really, how are you performing against your peers? How are the best performing reps? What calls and activity are they doing? And am I doing similar? It's sometimes really pleasing when you look at these numbers, and sometimes you haven't checked them in a week and you look at these dashboards and you're like, oh my goodness. So it really just keeps you on track and on point, I think, with where keep you accountable to goals that you've set yourself or that you've set with your manager. I think just seeing plain numbers and leaderboards here as well really lets you know like what everyone else is doing, and do you stack up. And we use it a lot for like gamification internally as well, so like competitions and things like that. So really putting intrinsic motivators in to drive outcomes. If call logging and activity logging is intrinsic to success, then absolutely, I think these reports are really useful and helpful. A common pitfall that I see people fall into, or reps fall into, can just be logging for the sake of logging. Now, we really want to avoid things like that. So just people logging calls for the sake of appearing on a leaderboard. And that's why things like call outcomes and notes and things like that are really important to be including in the process and the metrics that you're plugging in. But yeah, I'd say that's probably just one thing to call out and be aware of when you're pulling these. We actually had a question as well, Glenn, from Amelia, asking, are these reports, are they pre-configured reports? Can we find them in the report library or the sales dashboard?
Yeah, so that's a really awesome question, Amelia. And the answer is both, depending on your HubSpot licensing. So out the box, HubSpot just has generic reports that you can put keywords in. So sales manager report or deal report, and you can see the options and then add those to your dashboard. But on the fly, if you're a bit more advanced and you have the HubSpot permissions based on your licensing, you can actually custom build pretty much any property you can see in HubSpot. And even the screen you're seeing at the moment, wherever you're seeing a data point, generally you can feed off that information and plug it into a report. So that should answer your question. And I think, Danny, as a good segue from that question is just, we've covered a lot, and specifically around sales process and pipeline and stage development, deals as the vehicle to move that along. But I think just tying into Amelia's question, looking at custom properties, I think we're in the system, we get that, what that means. But to those that might be new or just trying to get into the HubSpot ecosystem or CRMs like this, a custom property is, like we said before, depending on your business, your niche, you might have a specific qualifying heading. You might want to say entity type. When I make a call, the person I'm talking to, their business represents an entity type, and it might be a supplier, a vendor, a customer. And so that would be a call out for a custom property. It's not baked into HubSpot's native system. It's a custom property you need. You'd create it, called entity type. You'd put your options in as a drop menu maybe, and you can then plug that in on a form. And coming back to Amelia's question, you could then look at how many of our contacts have this form completed and report on that as well, which is pretty awesome. And I think it's kind of another probably HubSpot fundamental we see a lot of people struggle to get their heads around, is just the kind of association. So in the two screenshots I've shown you, you may not have even seen the flicker, but this is a company record. And what's nice is companies and contacts and deals always interrelate. And they can always connect to one another and share the information. And as you're adding your custom properties, you can actually cater those on a company, contact, or deal, or deal level. So if the company, especially it's B2B, these objects allow you to really accommodate any kind of scenario. And as we discovered initially, and just this custom property discussion, you might have a field like this where it's prospect status. and is it that they committed, they most likely, or best case. So it's not just product related, but you can really have anything there. And I think just going without saying is just data hygiene. So if you're in a CRM right now, it's just things like, the standard we walk past is the standard we accept. So if you see a phone number that's out of whack, it means you'll never get them. If you see a name that's lowercase first letter, email campaign is going to be horrendous. Dear John with a lowercase j. So you just want to consider things like data hygiene and the consistency of labeling your records properly and maintaining good data hygiene. If you've got a team, letting the team know whenever you see an issue, fix it, because HubSpot's obviously real time, and just having the accurate details. So I think, Danny, that kind of brings us to the tail end, and just wrapping it up at this point. So I really hope that the session has stimulated a lot of thought and planted the seed to start your CRM and your sales journey and processes. And if you want to get serious about starting it or fixing it up, we thought this is just a good slide of homework to consolidate what we went through. Especially, I could see we've actually had some extra people join, and we went 5 minutes over just waiting for others. But defining your pipeline stages and putting pen to paper, identifying your best fit prospects and leads, mapping out and defining your personas, even like who is our customer, and jotting that down, because that'll influence how you talk to them and who you're talking to. Know your numbers. So set the business KPIs, set your team level KPIs, and if that's you for now, split those two things because they have different outcomes. Working through all of this will hopefully help you result some custom properties as well, and just reporting metrics. Now that you might have this data in the system, how do you actually use it to move your needle? So without further ado, we've excitingly learned that you can come off mute and talk to us and engage, which is awesome. And so, guys, it kind of wraps up the formalities, but we'll open the floor to any questions that you might have, and any that we can tackle straight away. Please just come off mic and have a chat. Thanks, Darcy. So I can see you're typing away there, which is awesome, guys. And yeah, any other questions otherwise? Catherine, it's a pleasure. Cool. So we'll give it a couple more seconds, Danny, and just talk through a little bit. But otherwise, exciting to have you all join us today. Thank you. As we mentioned, it's a 3-part series, so just stay tuned. We will announce in 2022, the next session, part 2 of this 3-part series. We'll obviously make the recording and the notes available to everyone who's attended by email. Please bear with us. The platform's a little bit tricky, so if you get odd-looking emails and the like, some of it's not in our control. Otherwise, please spread the word. What was also a bit difficult to get your head around is you can actually join the hug, but you don't have to attend every event. But if you want to attend an event, you have to RSVP to the event as well. So if you haven't actually joined our hug, please follow the links in the emails that'll follow. We'll make sure the link's there again. Join the hug so you get notified about each event. And when the events come out, you'll get them, and we'd love to hear from you. So we've just had a question come through from Darcy about how much time you need to set up HubSpot for the first time, migrating all the data from a previous system. Great question, Darcy. I think it largely depends on potentially how organized you are, and also if you know what you want. I know that sounds strange, but my gut feel is most businesses need to either work it out because you just don't know what you don't know, or you've never actually put such a process in place. We've had businesses where we can do this in as little as 5 days, literally, because they're uber organized. They've had people that have done this before, and others that it's taken 6 months. And as I said, to me, it's never ending. Even here at Lupo, we've evolved our systems and we keep making them as stealth as they can be. But it seems, the market evolves. And the other thing I enjoy is if you do things properly and you map out your personas, you map out this process, you actually have an opportunity to shape shift. And what I mean by that is if you've never purchased a Tesla, and Tesla didn't know what the market would do when they started consuming products, it starts to evolve you as a business. Now that you've got people using a Tesla, you start getting weird questions. My battery's not working long enough. So Tesla may not have planned for those things, but they might have to bake that into the future. And so what I'm saying is it should continually push you to grow. It's never set and forget, but as an initial startup, I'd cater for, anywhere between 5 days and realistically probably could be 6 weeks that you really feel like it's working. Danny, what are your thoughts?
I would add on to what you said that I think a CRM is a living, breathing, ever-changing beast, and properties that you didn't need 6 months ago, you might need now, or data that in a pipeline, a stage in a pipeline that you didn't know you needed, you now do. So I would encourage you to think of it in that way and be constantly flexible in terms of changing and editing. But you're absolutely right in terms of the data. I'd say the data cleanliness, if you are migrating from another system, is probably the basic fundamental that you need to get right first. And so I'd actually recommend you do that external to the CRM before you migrate in, and start with a clean, fresh set of data. That might be like sending out an EDM and making sure you're only inputting like the really engaged contacts or your really target audience. So I'd encourage that thinking to happen before you start doing the same way we discussed the pipeline, like mapping that out maybe on paper first. But what are the mission critical things that you want to have included, and working from there? And things will evolve and change and adapt as you start using it anyway. Naturally it will. So I'd say it's not a defined set of time, but really an evolving process over a period.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
absolutely, Darcy. The start of a new year is the perfect time.
Yeah, it's always I think part of why we wanted to get this first hug up now is that it's a good time. People are in this mode thinking and planning, and what can I do? Even if you've got your pipeline, how can I improve it, optimize it? And we hope that some of the pointers we've run through today will help you do that more efficiently. So I suppose just sharing with you, part 2, we'll go into a bit more detail around the actual tools, tasks, tools, sales template, emails, etc. And then part 3, we'll just look at performance tracking and reporting basics. So I don't know if Amelia's still with us, but just coming back into her question, that'll be a great session for Amelia. Yeah, so a big thanks to all of you for attending today. We hope that enriched things for you a little more. And we really look forward to seeing you on the next one. Oh, one sec. We had another question. Yeah, so great question, Mark. And yes, HubSpot has a native integration with Salesforce. So in a matter of clicks, that data can come in. Thanks for that question too. Awesome, guys. So we'll wrap it up over there, and we look forward to seeing you guys next time. Cheers.